Main trans engine. Number 1, 2 on. Number 3, 4 off. Number 5, 6, 7, 8 on.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Plamo Crew podcast. Again, I'm here with my co-host Citrus.
Hello, I'm Citrus and you're listening to this podcast.
Thank you for helping me out with that intro. Today we've got another episode just talking about some goings-on with Bandai and the current state of Gunpla, or at least the current state of Gunpla regarding the time that this is recorded. We're recording all of this during March, but by the time this episode comes out, it's probably going to be near, I want to say, August or so. I can't really think of it off the top of my head, but probably around end of summer. Anyways, the information we're talking about right now will probably still be relevant, but I had something I wanted to talk about, and then we're going to kind of lead into something Citrus wanted to talk about, which we'll get into later, but towards the end of...
Actually, at the end of last week's episode, we said we're going to start with this, so we should... Okay.
I totally forgot what we left off on, so yeah, you can lead the way on this one.
So last week, we said we're going to talk about how Good Smile Company, well, not Good Smile Company, but sort of how Bandai has kind of become Good Smile Company a little bit.
Okay, so
and what that could mean for the future of not just Gundam products, but maybe all Bandai products in the future.
Right,
at least for the hobby division, anyway.
Yeah, because Bandai owns a lot of properties.
Yeah.
Not just Gundam. Yeah, we can talk about, I wanted to talk about the Shokugan modeling project. We can definitely talk about that later towards the end.
I think this might actually segue into that pretty well once we get there.
Probably.
All right, so about like, I want to say, well, I got into Gunpla in around 2010, and around the same time I also got into, well, just a little bit into like figure collecting in general.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things now that is like the state of Gunpla now is like what trying to buy Good Smile Company products was like back then, right? So,
right.
Good Smile at the time was a very small, well, not very small, but they're fairly small, right? I mean, they were still one of the biggest figure companies.
It is now, yeah.
Yeah. So they were still one of the biggest players around, but definitely not as big as they're now. Like, they didn't have nearly as many licenses, and they weren't nearly producing things at the rate that they are now.
Right.
Their logistical record has pretty much always been poor, as far as I know. So like anytime they announce anything, like the release date that they give you is probably like generally like at least a month or two off.
Yeah.
So, well, fortunately, Bandai's never had that problem, but with like I think a very few rare exceptions. But what happened back then was, okay, so you would have Good Smile Company, like Good Smile Company would release like standard retail products, right? So it's not like something you would have to go online to buy from a special place or go to an event or anything like that.
Right, they're not exclusives.
But because they didn't have very much scale, every standard release basically was kind of an exclusive. Like if you missed that first batch, there's a pretty good chance you're just not going to be able to get it new again.
Yeah, because there just wasn't much production.
Yeah. So back then there was like there was a lot of like FOMO, right? Anytime anything was announced, like you really have to wonder, like you really have to think about if it was worth the risk of not pre-ordering something you might want, at the risk that if you didn't buy it, it would either disappear completely or the prices would just go through the roof.
Right.
And there was a time when you could basically buy almost anything. So like any basic, relatively normal Figma or Nendoroid, right? Which at the time was like their sort of like bottom end products. And you can expect to not lose money on it at all.
Yeah.
Like you can immediately receive it, turn it around, sell it for what you paid plus shipping, and someone will buy it within like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like most people like Nendoroids and Figmas, so.
Right. They're really kind of,
unless you have them in like terrible condition, they don't really depreciate too much.
So, unlike now, like back then, there kind of wasn't. I mean, there still kind of were. Like there were a few things that were like shell formers, right? That you'd see in like secondhand shops or on people's like to sell lists all the time, and no one would ever want them. But there weren't very many of them, not nearly like it is now, where like if you go on Mandrake, there's a pretty good chance you will be able to find like sealed in box Figma for like 2,000 yen, just because the hype passed and it's gone and like nobody wants it anymore.
Yeah.
So there was and you know, so it was this time, and it was a very short time in hindsight, but like this was the case for a couple of years where everything came out seemed to be gold. Everything just flew off the shelves all the time, and you just had to be on it. So there was always like this kind of stress that came with buying anything, because you never knew if you could chance not getting something, right? For example, like the earlier Figma Miku releases, like when they started doing like racing Mikus, holy crap, like the the first one that they made was for I think 2000, oh geez, racing Miku I think it was 2011. The original price, if you were to do like the actual sponsorship for the race team, so it was like a race, it was like, oh, you contribute like a certain amount to the team, and then based on however much you pay, they would give you a certain number of goods, and the base tier includes the Figma action figure, and then from there on it includes other stuff like passes, lanyards, umbrellas, like parkas.
I mean, I just do that for the figure.
Yeah, so like the buy-in, right, at the minimum, I think at the time was something like $80-ish or something like that, before like proxy fees, shipping, and all that, blah blah blah. And you pay that, and then you pay your like 10-15% ish proxy fees and whatever, because you know at the time a lot of the good proxies that we have today didn't exist, and obviously the prices were still much higher. So you're about $100 in the hole. But as soon as you get it, you could flip the figure for like $190.
Right, because people who want to buy it who couldn't get in on the ground floor.
Exactly. So we're kind of, so that's one way where we're kind of in that situation with Gunpla right now, right? Where a standard release will happen. Even like through a lot of the Japanese retailers. So for example, like Amiyami, their web retail business that exports, so for the rest of the world, is completely separate from their like web retail business, like domestically, and for like actual like in Japan. Like you could literally, like you can now actually miss pre-order windows for Gunpla.
Yeah, no,
right?
like yeah, if you miss a pre-order window on something on P Bandai, most of the time like you're screwed. I mean, if it's something like the Mark V that got reprinted like 3 times already, you know, you might get lucky, but then you might end up with something like, oh, what is it, like, I don't know, say the M91, and that's not the best kit, but that's like one that comes to mind that like I don't think that's ever gotten like a reprint anytime recently.
Yeah, no, but it's yeah, and that's becoming the case for even normal releases too now. For example, like let me just look in a couple of places real quick. So, for example, I know that on Amiyami, like pre-orders have been closed for the Real Grade Wing Gundam for a while.
Yeah.
And, like, we're coming up fairly close to release now, and obviously by the time you're hearing this, it'll be after release, but they wouldn't, like, you just can't get a pre-order anymore. Same with the case with, like, a Hobby Search. So lots of places, like, their allocations of these kits prior to release are actually now completely selling out, when this was never a thing that used to happen. Like this has happened with the Zeong.
Yep.
This has happened with the Wing Zero, the Wing, God, what is it called now? Wing Zero Custom Verka. Is that what it is?
Yeah, the Wing Zero name? Custom Verka, the Endless Waltz one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Last year's Verka.
Yeah. Oh, and also the Faust Verka.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can't find
kits.
those anywhere now, which makes me sad because I really want 3 of the Fats Verkas.
Yeah, and we don't even need to talk about like the Real Grade Evangelion DX kits, right? Those like just just disappeared
kidding.
Like instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and when you get and so okay, so you can't pre-order anymore really. So you wait for it to come to you stateside, right? And then you have to pray that you have good relations with some local store so that they'll be able to hold one for you if they don't do pre-orders.
Right.
Like, so my local, they when the G40 came out over here, all of them disappeared within 5 hours of him literally opening the box. Like,
yeah,
that's
that
how quick
happens
it was.
sometimes, and it's like if you're not in there, you're screwed.
He opens the store at 10, right? He says, "Okay, this is here now," and I go over there after work at like 6, and they're all gone.
Yeah.
So like, that's the kind of situation now where, because even though Gunpla like is massive, right, and Bandai's a huge company, but because there's so much demand right now, it's almost like Bandai's a tiny company all over again.
Right, because the demand, like we were talking about last time, really did kind of skyrocket due to COVID, due to people being cooped up in their homes, people who are already building Gunpla buying more to keep themselves occupied because they have more time on their hands, more people getting into the hobby because it is becoming more mainstream in the West due to more availability and more media and more distribution, which means that, like we were talking about, there's kind of spreading themselves a little thin with how many new stores are popping up. And I was in Galactic Toys the other day and I was talking to the co-owner. We were talking about this exact same thing, and he was saying, like, it seems like every day there's a new store that pops up online that wants to sell Gunpla, and it makes it very hard for people to keep stuff in stock because they're taking, even though it's a small piece, they're still taking a piece of the pie away from everybody else. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just driving up demand. And Bandai's I'm not saying like, oh, they're a terrible company because they can't meet demand. No, it's just the realistic thing is right now they're struggling, at least from what I've seen and what I would assume, they're struggling to meet that demand. And oh man, what else was I going to talk about? Oh yeah.
Well, but like this situation definitely puts the actual brick and mortar retailers into a huge bind, right? Because you have more competitors, but you're all selling the same basic product,
right? So
differentiating becomes really hard. Margins get super thin, right? Exactly. Because you're competing now for not just audience, like the customers, but you're also competing for inventory, literally.
Exactly.
So
yeah, Galactic. Well, Zach, the co-owner of Galactic, he's the one I have the most contact with because he manages like sales and sending out kits and stuff like that. He was telling me another thing that really impacted stock was the stimulus going out. He said as soon as that stimulus hit people's bank accounts, they sold $100,000 worth of Gunpla from their inventory in 1 week.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, they're kind of struggling right now. Like, they're doing good business-wise, but they're struggling to keep things in stock due to just Bandai hobby shortages, due to everything we just talked about, and due to so many people buying up such high volumes of stock like in such a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm. So this is like the first half of the similarities, right? So we have standard releases that are effectively becoming exclusive,
right?
Because there's a limited window to get a limited quantity of a thing that may or may not come back again for a very long time. So that's one. All right, so the other thing is kind of exclusives becoming no longer exclusive. And we could so for on Good Small Company, this started happening, I want to say like around 2013, 14ish, maybe 15, when they started really going back to do all these surveys like, hey, what releases in the past did you miss out on that you want us to re-release? They started doing re-release surveys really frequently. Yeah. And they actually started reprinting a lot of things. But in order to like sort of to make their corner, right, they launched like the Good Smile online shop, so you can buy this re-release of a thing, pre-order it, and it'll come with maybe a small bonus or whatever, something like that.
Right. And
the first couple of times it happened, people were like, oh my god, yeah, this is awesome. And then they just started doing it for a lot of stuff, and then like they'll have event exclusive stuff for like Wonder Festival and I I don't know if they did C3 or not, but it's definitely stuff like they'll have like big events like Comic-Con, Wonderfest or whatever. Like anywhere where they had any kind of presence at all, they'll have like some sort of event exclusive thing. But as soon as that thing happens in Japan, once they go out of Japan, like maybe it's like an anime convention in Europe or in America, they have a booth, they'll bring those exact things over here.
Yeah.
And every single time at every event, they'll be like, oh, we only have a limited quantity, and they'll sell out, and then you'll see the boards with like the stickers on them that's like gone, 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 whatever. But then next event, a couple weeks or month down the line, there's more and more and more and more.
Exactly.
And, like, event exclusives suddenly are no longer really event exclusives. It's just that you have to go to an event to buy it at sticker price. That's it. And then because there's just so many of these now, the secondhand prices on them start tanking, and suddenly they no longer become exclusive or even altogether all that desirable, right?
Right.
And that's exactly what's happened with a lot of like Gunpla Expo exclusives or just like whatever, right? Basically, like Bandai will just bring like stuff over here. For example, like in 2019, like you could still get like mechanical clear frame Sazabis at anime conventions across America, wherever Bluefin went to have a stand.
Right.
So and that has been a exclusive released in Japan like a pretty good while ago, right? So like that's that. Oh, and also like the web exclusives, like you miss a pre-order window, okay, and then a month, 2 months, 3 months later, another one will just open again.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, we already talked about how Bandai prefers to do this, but it's just that, like, being limited edition no longer means limited edition.
Yeah. I think that part of it, I want to say, I think Bandai is kind of using Premium Bandai, at least to give them some benefit of the doubt. Not entirely just for, like, greed. I want to say they're using it to kind of just push out stuff that they maybe under non-pandemic circumstances would be able to mass produce, but they want to make absolutely sure they don't have any shelf warmers, so they're using P Bandai as a way to kind of push out pre-orders to gauge how popular something is. And maybe that's why the Mark V is getting constant reprints in such a short amount of time.
Because the rationale behind that would be that if they did something on P Bandai before to like quote unquote test out the waters and then it went well, then a subsequent thing that comes out would be a general release. And in fact, what we're seeing is the opposite, where things that were general releases are now becoming exclusive.
That is a good point. Like with the Mark V, yeah, it is weird to put it on P Bandai. I'm just wondering if their increased demand and the pandemic circumstances have made them think that they need to. Like, I don't think it's a good idea to use P Bandai to do this. I don't think Bandai's really losing a insane amount of money if they release a kit that has some shelf warmers. Because, like, let's be real here. Bandai owns the rights to, what is it, like the 7th most profitable IP in the entire world, whatever Gundam is sitting at right now. It's like they have an exorbitant amount of money, so it's not like they need to be frugal.
I honestly think it's from, I think a lot of it is not so much financial as much as it is logistical.
That's true.
They do Pre-Bandai, I think, really to just make all of their manufacturing and all of their production schedules more predictable. So that and I don't mean predictable in the sense that like the like, how do I want to say this? I don't mean predictable like in the sense that like, oh, like they're not going to know how much to make or not. It's more like if they do P Bandai, they know exactly how many to make and they know exactly how many to sell and how much money they will make from that, because canceling orders is something that you kind of really can't do. I mean, you can, right? But even then, like, that can be absorbed very easily into the flex in the supply chain, the like in the production.
Right.
But if they do a standard release, it's like, well, if something just sells out, then they wouldn't know exactly how much something sells out by, and how long they should extend the production the production run.
That's true, and it may be making it easier on them in that regard, but it's kind of making it a worse experience for the consumer.
Well, actually, depends on where you are. That's the thing. So, at the end of the day, you could say that the consumer does pay a higher price. But the thing is, if you're in Japan, you doing something P Bandai means you will definitely get that thing the day or 1 or 2 days after it comes out.
Right.
It's a guarantee. And when you're and like, I mean, I don't really know what the situation is actually like on the ground in hobby stores in Japan right now, because obviously there are stores still literally full of Gunpla, but like there is a possibility, maybe, again, I really don't know, but it saves you the trouble of getting on a train, going to a store, and depending on how enthusiastic you are about it, lining up in the morning, waiting outside, getting it, and then carrying it home, right? Like there's a convenience argument to be made if you are in Japan, or actually in any real like P Bandai territory. We don't really count because obviously like our P Bandai US doesn't really belong to Bandai completely. It's not quite the same gig.
And when I said when I was talking about it makes it like a worse experience for the customer, I mean like worldwide speaking, not like the people who have access to P Bandai. I'm talking about like Bandai relegates something to P Bandai for logistical reasons. That makes sense for them. But then you have like people in Japan. Sure, they can probably get that really easy. People in the U.S. With relative ease, you could probably snag a pre-order if you're lucky enough. You know, some require a little bit more speed than others, because I've seen them sell out like instantly before. You know.
Oh yeah.
Like I've gone to get something I wanted off P Bandai, refresh the page as soon as the pre-order goes live, it's out of stock. Mark V I didn't have a problem with, but still a lot of people got them. But I'm talking about like Canada, or well, literally anywhere outside the US or Japan or like Southeast Asia where you can't really get Premium Bandai stuff easily. Like you're gonna have a lot worse of a time getting anything they relegate to P Bandai, because you're gonna have to most likely go through either importing, or you're gonna have to go through like a scalper or like a third-party seller.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is really true. That is definitely true, and it really does suck. Mm-hmm. There's no like there's no good way to spin that, honestly. Yeah, like if you're in any region that Bandai doesn't serve, it's just it really does suck. But to be fair, in those regions, even when it came to standard releases, it's kind of always sucked. So you could also kind of make the argument, right, that maybe there's not that much of a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I think there was like it wasn't like a Gundam base. I don't think they called it that, but it was like some sort of like Bandai Hobby Gunpla store. Maybe it was a pop-up thing, but I think it was in France.
I think that was a pop-up. I think I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah. So if anything, I mean, like Bandai is definitely aware of the problem, and I think the fact that they have opened Premium Bandai US, even though in my opinion the opening was a bit rocky, like they are trying to expand. Yeah. But
well, I remember your video, like how not to open an online store or something on Premium Bandai. I watched that when it came out. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, and you know, and I speak that, and I said that like because like living in Washington, this is one of the sort of like I would argue slightly worse states to get things, just because in my area like we have a really high sales tax, right? So
right.
And yeah, so but it's fine, right? Like it's you really can't expect them to be like perfect at this, and honestly there's probably like legal crap that they have to jump through as well.
Right.
Like,
it's probably a complete logistical nightmare if we're being obvious. If we're being honest, I can't speak. I said obvious, and then I almost said ominous. I don't know what the hell's wrong with me right now. But if we're being honest, yeah, it's probably a complete logistical nightmare trying to deal with all of this at once. Like we said, like they are expanding in a lot of aspects, both in the types of things they're producing and the new markets they're trying to tap into, and all the new people trying to get supply from them, and the rising demand. Yeah, it's a lot to deal with. So I don't entirely place 100% of the blame on them, but I don't want to just be like a mindless consumer and not be like critical of the stuff and the companies that I'm consuming products from, because I see people be like, well, Premium Bandai is actually good because we're still able to get the stuff, and we should just be happy that it's just being made, and that
no, like screw that. Like,
yeah, no, I've literally seen people say that word for word. It's like, I'm just happy it exists. It's like, you should be demanding better. You should, it's like that thing. I can't remember what it's from, but it's like.
Although to be fair, I will say that using that line of reasoning to defend Bandai is probably a little bit more okay than trying to use that to defend somebody like EA or something.
True.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's part 2. So part 3. So this is where sort of Good Smile Company's been more recently, and potentially where Bandai could be going, and what I desperately hope does not happen.
Okay. Go on.
So, Good Smile is they have a lot of IPs now, right? So they have like Disney, like all the classic Disney.
Yep.
They have Marvel. They have Blizzard.
Yep.
They got freaking CD Projekt now, so like doing all the cyberpunk stuff.
Yep. I just saw that new cyberpunk Figma that was like announced today or something like that.
Yeah. So they have they now have a wide pool, like a lot of audiences that they can appeal to, right?
Right.
That's great for them. But obviously the risk comes when the audiences you have don't overlap, which means when you make a product, the risk kind of increases, right? Because every product takes like a certain amount of time to develop. And
right, you're putting your manufacturing into that one thing, but you're only appealing to that niche market.
Yeah, so you'd better hope that either that one particular product has enough pull from its audience, or that one product can hit a really wide audience, right?
Yeah.
So that puts a lot of strain on your planning. Now, if you look at like Good Smile companies that have products that have come out in the last, let's say, since maybe 2016, 17 onwards, the prices have gone up. That's there's no debate. Like a basic Figma now, it's not uncommon to see one going for like $80, $90 with very few accessories.
Right.
Whereas 10 years ago, the same Figma made to roughly the same kind of quality would have been 30 to 40.
Yeah.
Like, now if you guys don't know the economy of Japan hasn't really experienced like actual inflation in like almost 20 years. Like it's huge. Stuff that cost this much maybe like in 2000 roughly still costs the same as they do today. Taxes have gone up. Sales tax has, I think, in this time gone from like I think 3% up to now we're at 10 in Japan. So what that says is that like in real money that people are actually paying for these sorts of collectibles, they are literally getting more expensive. Like if you had like a $200 let's just call it a toy budget in 2000, you would have been able to buy much more per month than you could today.
Yeah, the consumer's average buying power has gone down by a lot in many regards.
Right. So there are a lot of like economic factors that have contributed to this. that affect everybody, because it's not just Good Smile Company's products that have become more expensive. Everybody's has, more or less. But in Good Smile Company, they made a couple of, in my opinion, logistical snafus that kind of contributed to this. And one of them was when they tried to expand their production capacity. There were a series of figures that they made several years back where they tried to basically expand. So, okay, so how do I explain this? Okay, so they, for the longest time, they have had always made their stuff in China. I don't know how well known that is, but that's a fact. And how this basically works is that, like, they have allocations that they would buy from literal figure factories. The reason why you see so many bootlegs in China is because, well, when the factory gets an allocation to make something, Good Smile Company furnishes them with the molds that they have to use to make all of these things.
Right.
So it's not hard to imagine that once like somebody gets a mold over there, they could just literally remake it, and a lot of people do. So, like, even if the factories try themselves to, like, keep this as, like, confidential and tightly wrapped as possible, you can't stamp out, like, every single person who just, like, oh yeah, I'll just like, you know, sell one of these things for like a couple of $1,000 on the side or whatever. And then there's also just the possibility that somebody could just literally buy something or steal a pre-production copy, literally anything, and just, like, make a reverse mold out of that, right?
Right.
So, okay, so you have all of these companies trying to buy allocation from these different factories in China, and they're all competing with each other, and the capacity has some flex in it, but it's not like that much, right? Which is also why, like, Good Smile Company and a lot of other companies that make figures have such horrible logistics records, is because they actually really aren't in control of when the figures that they ask for are produced.
Yeah.
It's up to the producer, and they don't really have any say over them other than the fact that they paid for something and that it will get done eventually. So, Good Smile tried to sort of alleviate the problem. And it's like, okay, well, let's try to bring figure making back to Japan. And they tried to open up their own facility. And there's, like, a little documentary that they made of, like, their like, little Nendoroid assembly line on YouTube that you can search up.
Yeah, I think I did see that a while ago. I don't remember the content, but I remember, like, seeing that.
And it was a really interesting look into how the manufacturing process goes. And for Figma, obviously, it's a fairly similar process, but it's not quite the same because Figma sculpts have the capacity to become much more varied, right? Because they are to scale roughly,
right?
Or like they're in correct proportion. So, like, you have to do more tooling than you would have to do for, like, let's say, Nendoroid limbs, which are roughly all the same kind of sausagey kind of type shape.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like they all kind of look relatively similar because they're in that, like, deformed, like, chibi style. They're not really having to be made to like the exact standards of the original, like, model of the character that they're trying to emulate. Sorry for my kind of delayed response. I was taking a sip of my water.
No, yeah, it's fine. So they have this. So they try to launch their new facility. Training up people takes a lot of time. They make a lot of mistakes. There were multiple periods in GSC's timeline where certain products just had horrible QC issues. And in fact, like, even between, like, 2010 to, like, 2013, which was the time during which I collected figures the most, like, with every single release, you can so I was collecting Black Raw Shooter figures at the time.
Yeah.
Literally, with each new figure that comes out, the defects increase per release, because at the time they were trying to book more and more capacity in China, right?
Right.
And that means there's less and less time for, like, rigorous QC, especially given the massive volumes of figures that they have to then, like, hand finish and so on or whatever. I observed more instances of figures having to go through, like, QC checks where they, like, have to go, like, literally cut the box open, inspect it again, or replace something, and then put it back together and reseal it.
Right.
Like, that's happened. And So they were really stretching themselves thin, and they tried to expand their capacity, stretch themselves even thinner, and all the while they have to increase prices because the way that they're doing things, like expanding capacity costs money, right? So that's kind of like a bad thing that really kind of ultimately happened for a consumer, where they yes, you do get a much wider variety of products now, but in any given calendar cycle, month, quarter, year, whatever, you are now less likely to see something that you personally care about, because the company now caters to a much wider audience, and whatever you do receive will be more expensive, and the quality is likely to be well, if not jeopardized, then at least it's much more of a toss-up, because you're not 100% sure where it comes from, and you're not 100% sure of how large the batch that came out of may have been, which means that the individual QC for any given figure may be worse, better, or whatever.
Yeah. Now,
and while all of this is happening, because the product, like the product catalog, was expanding so quickly, like their customer support had to decrease in scope as well. There was a time when you could buy a second-hand figure, and if a part was damaged, even if you had bought the figure, even if the figure came out like more than 1 or 2 years ago, you can still get replacement pieces. A few years ago, they cut that down to within 6 months, and then more recently, I believe they reduced it to the scope of only like the first purchaser, right?
Oh, geez.
And so on and so forth. So that is a direction that could potentially happen to Bandai if they were to expand as haphazardly as Good Smile Company had tried to.
Yeah, that is a really good point. And I'm glad that you're leading the discussion on this one, because I'm learning a lot that I didn't know about Good Smile, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Something I would say, at least with Bandai, a lot of the IPs that they own are at least in the same general wheelhouse of being like anime, and more specifically like mecha anime related.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Sunrise has done a brilliant job of keeping a very tight portfolio of stuff.
Yeah.
That has a lot of cross appeal, if you will.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, even if Bandai stopped as much production on Gundam stuff, which they won't, that's like their biggest cash cow, like literally. But like if they started making more stuff from other mecha series, like I don't think anyone would be that mad, because it's all kind of in, like I said, in the same wheelhouse. But yeah, I definitely also get where you're going, but at least they're not like trying to spread themselves out to like cater to the Disney audience or something, right? Like I don't think we're gonna see any like Cars, like Lightning McQueen plastic model kits from Bandai anytime soon, you know. And even then, they're still just making plastic model kits, so it would, you know, I would assume they're still going through the same QC as like the Gundam kits do.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's well, so we are seeing though now, sorry. So Bandai is making more plastic model kits and more, let's say, genres of stuff. Right?
Yes.
So they're doing like the God, I forgot the line's called, but you know, with the PlayStation, the Saturn.
Yes,
and
they're doing the little
noodle.
console ones, the little. Yeah, I don't know what the specific line is called, but they're doing like those little home object ones.
Yeah.
They're also doing the Pokemon ones, like the Pokemon figures and stuff.
Yeah, and it's and they're. Well, I guess the smart thing that Bandai's doing is that they're being really conservative, like they're being really safe, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so we make model kits of Shonen Jump, we make model kits of Kamen Rider, we make model kits of Ultraman, and there's a good chance that anybody who likes this probably also already liked Gundam. So they're like, it's all a lot of like really, like sort of interwoven kind of things. So Bandai did make a Plamo, a series called Hako Room. Okay. I think you were talking about home things. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like the little home objects, like the ramen, the Sega Saturn, the
no,
the
okay.
The PS1.
This is this is a little different. So this is, if you know anything about, how would I best explain this? It's kind of like Sylvanian Families, but model kits.
Okay.
Or Calico Critters.
I think I've heard of that, but I'm not sure.
So they're like these little, the original concept are these little plastic flocked animal dolls, basically.
Okay.
About like maybe 3 to 4 inches big.
Okay.
And you can buy like a whole family of them. They come in all kinds of different animals. They're like they're like bears, rabbits, cats, dogs, whatever. And they like wear like clothes. And then the idea is that you can buy like doll houses for them and like little cars and furniture and stuff for them and like that.
Yeah.
So Bandai in I think it was in 2017-ish, they tried to make this series happen to, I guess, try to aim at that audience, right? So they only released one series of animals. Yeah, they're all bears.
Okay.
And they're pretty cute. And the idea is that you can assemble the characters, right? They would wear clothes that some of them were molded, although I believe most other of them were just like paper craft. And you can build like little sort of set pieces that are supposed to look like different rooms of a house, like a bathroom, a kitchen, bedroom, so on.
Okay.
And that you'd be able to assemble all these set pieces together with like walls and a roof and have like a sort of like dollhouse kind of thing, but it's all plastic model kits.
Interesting.
And this was very short-lived. So it started in 2017, and 2018, I believe, was like the last thing that came out. So I think like exercises like this, where situations where Bandai sort of like, okay, we can't try to step out too far at one time. We have to be a little careful.
Right.
Yeah. Because like since they've made this, they haven't made they really kind of haven't made anything similar to it at all. Which is weird because like sure the IP that this was for, the Hako Room Series 4 is called the Bear School, and like it wasn't like like a big enormous thing, but like it isn't a successful thing on its own. It's just that the crossover interest between people who like this and also want to build like plastic model kits of these characters and their houses is just not there.
Exactly. Right.
So like you made, that's probably like a mistake that like GSC made, I would say. Well, it's really weird, right? Okay, so Overwatch. Very popular, right?
Right. Well, it used to be, at least.
Was very popular.
It was very popular. 2016, 2015, whenever that game came out, and then it's kind of been on a slow decline ever since.
So Good Smell Company like went all in on Overwatch, right? Made a ton of like Nendos and Figmas and everything.
Yeah, that Tracer Figma is quite the shelf warmer actually nowadays.
Yes.
I see it at like every Best Buy that I go to.
Right? Because they're like, oh wait, you mean the people who play FPSs may not, no, the people who are like just, very serious gamers may not be that concerned with a physical manifestation of something that they just interact with on a screen all the time, like.
Right. Is this like there's a little bit of a more, I don't know how I want to word this. There's a bit more of a disconnect when you have something that's in an anime versus something in a video game, because it's like Titanfall 2. It's like, yeah, I would love to see Bandai make model kits of the Titans, which is something that I'll touch on later. But at the same time, it's like I can directly interact with them in the game, which is a really cool experience. But if it was like something like, Gundam anime, yeah, there's Gundam video games, but like when it was just the Gundam anime, you can see them on the screen, but you can't really interact with them. It's like that makes kind of having merch of that a little bit more special, at least in my opinion. I might be like, that might just be my opinion, but like that's where I would like kind of my reasoning goes.
Yeah, you're totally right. And honestly, when it comes to like even mecha, like for example, Kotobukiya, they had the Armored Core license for forever, right? The Armored Core 3 series did really well. Armored Core 4 and 4 Answer, that series did pretty okay. And for like Armored Core 5, they made like only 2 kits.
Yeah.
Because Armored Core, and the reason why Armored Core never picked up in the same way that Frames Arms did, even though if you look at the premise of the game, the functional abilities of the model kits, it's very, very similar to Frame Arms, isn't it? Because the whole idea in the game is that all of these mechs have interchangeable parts that you can like combine in different ways to make different kinds of machines that are good in different kinds of combat situations.
Right.
And they even made armor, they even made like weapon packs for them, and it was amazing. But I think ultimately the reason why that never really took off as opposed to Frame Arms is because Frame Arms doesn't have a narrative. It's just like you buy a thing and it's just a canvas and you can do whatever you want to it. But like you buy an Armored Core kit and it's always a model kit of some mech that appears in the story of the game.
Right.
But it's never the one that the player would ever really care about, because the mech that the player cares about is their own mech.
Okay, but the white glint is really cool though.
Sure, but
I get where you're coming from.
But like nobody cares about the Tellus or like the Sola or anything like that, because that's just an NPC that they had to fight once, or maybe that's just the starter that they happened to pick at the beginning of the game. Like there wasn't enough in the line for people that Kotobukiya made for people to actually to make like the mechs that they actually had in the game and be like, oh yeah, this is what I actually piloted, it's awesome.
Right.
And then the people who are really, really into Armored Core because they like really fast action combat, like a static thing of a robot that they pilot in the game doesn't really like, that's kind of like not what they're into Armored Core for, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Now
they're the kind of people who would number crunch and like count pixels and like be, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know how profitable it would be, but a cool idea, like something that would be kind of cool to see happen. If Bandai were to get the Armored Core license, right? And they made an Armored Core line of Gunpla that was specifically made to be modular, like the 30-minute missions line, but it's specifically with the Armored Core aesthetic.
Well, that would be cool. That would certainly be cool, but I really would doubt that Kotobukiya would have let go of the license. And
or even just if Kotobukiya did that as kind of a competitor to the 30-minute missions line, have something that's modular, but it's specifically like Armored Core. So it's like, hey, you guys like Armored Core, you guys are always saying you want more Armored Core kits, well here you can make your own and you can buy other ones to make your own customs, just like you can in the game.
The thing is, that's exactly what the kits already did.
Oh, really?
And that wasn't it. That's not. Yeah, that's not. It just wasn't enough. So, for example, like you could take like the, like yeah, you could like all of the pegs for the limbs, and the like the limbs, the legs, and so on are all like the same kind of connection. So you could take like the torso of the fragile, stick it on stasis or whatever, and do whatever you want. And that's also why like some of the a lot of the mechs that you see, especially towards the later in the release line, later on in the line, were pretty heavy recycles. So let me just look up a couple real quick.
Okay.
So there is a okay, so there's a blue one. I'm just trying to think of the name real quick. Okay. So yeah, so it's the Project Magnus. So the top half of it is stasis, and the bottom half of it is the ex sombrero. So it's literally just take it apart, put it together again. And let's see, there's like the okay, so the Sola that I was talking about, the chest of that came from the Aspina white glint.
Okay.
So they're like the model kits are well designed enough that they already can do this. It's just that like there weren't enough of them made in order to actually replicate what you could do in the video game. For example, like there's like only one set of reverse legs in the whole line, and And
by reverse legs, do you
like,
mean like the way the legs bend, like they bend backwards?
yeah, like chicken legs, like
okay,
yeah,
so like Titanfall Titan legs.
Yeah, they made only one design of reverse legs in the whole thing, and in the game there's like a ton of them. And there are no tank treads, there are no quadrupeds, and there are like literal like meta. Well, if you could call it meta, I don't really know if like there was a competitive meta for Armored Core at some point, I'm sure, but like there are very many viable parts that people would have actually played with in the game that just don't exist.
So what you're saying was like the concept was there, it was just not executed as well as it could have been.
Yeah, and I think the part of it probably comes down to the expense of the license, that like, well, we make a thing, we have to pay the fee.
Right.
So we could just take this idea, turn it into our own product, and that's probably what turned out to be Frame Arms.
True.
Yeah.
I guess like maybe something that could have helped it. Well, I don't know. Like I'm kind of talking out of my ass here, but like Kotobukiya models are a bit more expensive than Bandai's, like by and large. But I guess like those Armored Core models, from what I've seen, I unfortunately don't have any of them. I really want the white glint one. They are pretty pricey. Like if they could have made it something like the 30-minute missions line, where it's maybe a bit smaller, but it still has that focus on being modular, and they market it specifically as how it's modular, like in the game. Like the modularity and the cheap price point is like the big two selling factors for 30-minute missions.
Sure, yeah, and I think
like they could have possibly done something like that with the Armored Core kits.
Yeah, and I think that this is also like part of like Kotobukiya finding their identity, like their niche in the market, right? Because at the time they were really focused on having all of these, high detail kind of kits, like insane high parts count, tiny pieces, color correct everything, which is why like in an Armored Core kit, especially if you look at some of like the Armored Core 3 kits, you could literally have a kit with like 4 different shades of metallic gray in it. And you just have tiny pieces in them, just so that when you put it together, it looks like it does in the video game.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. They definitely didn't have to do that. But I think at the time, right, given the smaller demographic that these were targeted towards, I think that was probably the safest play.
I was just gonna say that
they made. Yeah.
Like nowadays, that making something more 30-minute missions esque would probably be more profitable. But yeah, I think I think that definitely probably was the safest option. I was gonna say that like when I was talking earlier, and I just totally forgot to omit it. And then you started talking about it. I was like, oh yeah, that was a point I wanted to make. Is probably why they didn't do that, because they're like, it's just safer to make good-looking model kits that are sizable and well detailed of the existing like popular mechs, just as they are.
Yeah. So tying this back to Good Smile Company and I guess Bandai. So I'm not 100% sure if Good Smile necessarily learned the lesson that they should have out of Overwatch. But I know that Kotobukiya definitely has learned the lesson from building kits out of existing IPs, right? And how to take the good elements out of the things that they made for them and to turn it into their own strong products.
Right.
So Bandai has a lot to learn from, and they know now that if they go into other IPs, they need to make sure that there's always at least some kind of overlap between their existing audience, and that when they make something, they have to be very careful with how they position the product, right? Whether it's a high detail, premium, high-end thing, or a like very simple, approachable, affordable thing.
Yeah.
And I think, like, for example, the way that Bandai's handles Star Wars, I think is fascinating, right? Because they've done both, and it's done incredibly well for them, because just look at how many kits there are that came out in such a short amount of time, right?
Right.
It's insane.
Yeah, no, they're doing very well with that stuff.
Yeah. So I just hope that like they clearly know how to go after IPs and appeal to new audiences. They just need to know. They just need to make sure that like their operational game plan with like increasing manufacturing capacity, capacity planning, and so on, that everything is in a row.
Yes.
And
now, talking about Bandai getting like a bunch of IPs and talking about them expanding and doing different stuff, that kind of brings me around to what I wanted to talk about, which is their new line, the Shokugan modeling project. So if you, the people who are listening, are familiar, Bandai has a line of kits that they make that are not produced in Japan at their normal whatever it's called, the plastic injection facility. I can't remember the name of it, but like where they make the Gunpla. It's made in China.
Shizuoka.
Yeah, Shizuoka. I knew you said it before. It's just skipped my mind. But it's a line of Gunpla. Well, not Gunpla. It's not Gundam stuff, but it's a line of mecha model kits that are produced in China, not Shizuoka. And they are for IPs like the Brave series, like Dagwon, X Kaiser, Might Gain, Gao Gaigar, stuff like that. Just lesser known stuff. They make them, they're called candy toys, and they don't have a ton of detail. They don't have like, they usually have pretty good sculpts, but they have pretty exorbitant prices for what they are. It's kind of not really something that appeals to the average consumer, but it is cool to be getting like merch of stuff that normally otherwise wouldn't necessarily get merch, I guess. But
yeah.
Anyway, so they're doing the new Shokugan modeling project line, and to my understanding, it's like a kind of a revamped version of Super Mini-Pla, which is that line of candy toys. I think they're still going to be candy toys, so you're not going to be able to expect anything more than like high grade or like slightly above average high grade quality. Like you're not going to be seeing master grade tier things coming out of this. But the interesting thing coming out of this is, well, first of all, they're kicking off the line with a brand new Gunbuster model kit, which is pretty exciting. It looks very good, but we haven't seen any actual images of the model. I think just the 3D render. But what does interest me is they ran a poll on the Bandai website asking people, what IPs would you like to most see us make kits out of for the Shokugan modeling project? And there are so many things on here like that never get merch that Bandai's like possibly considering making stuff out of. Like I'm looking at the list right now. There's a lot of stuff on here that's already gotten kits from the Super Mini-Pla line, like a lot of the Brave series. But we have stuff on here like Bongon that I don't believe has ever gotten merch, or at least a model kit. There's potential to get model kits from something like Tetsujin 28, Tekkaman, which I know we just got the Orange Cat model, but not a Bandai one. Let's see what else is on here. Stuff like Daimos. Something I was really excited about, they have Vifam on here. Do you know Vifam? Like the old mecha show? Not
very deeply. I know of it. I heard of it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but I really like the mech design. Funny enough, actually, I know you haven't seen the fully edited up podcast yet, but the intro I used is part of the opening for Vifam for the podcast. Let me pull up that thing again though. There were some on here I wanted to talk about. Detonator Orgun is another one that I would be really excited to see some merch come out of. They're talking about possibly doing some Votom stuff. I can't remember, does Bandai currently do Votom stuff, or is that mostly Wave? I know Wave does Votoms, and Kotobukiya does Votoms too?
Their license is all over the place, because Good Smile has a chunk of it too.
Yeah. I think there was some really old Votom stuff, like back when they were doing stuff like Metal Armor Dragonar as well, which is also on this list. Basically, like any mainline mecha series and even some more obscure stuff on here, they have.
Yeah, they definitely did. Like, there are definitely Gundam Votoms kits for sure. I just don't know if necessarily it's active.
Yeah, I don't think they've made anything Votoms in a while, But I think they did at least. Well, I'm sure they have the license. It's a Sunrise anime, but they definitely did make them at one point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something that's interesting. They've added not just anime stuff, but they're taking requests to, or at least including it in the poll, to make stuff from video games. Let's see, there's like the Mega Man series on here, Metabots, Metarots, Armored Core is on here. Yeah.
I do not want that. That is gonna be very bad. Oh god. A Shokugan Armored Core thing is just gonna be like the gummiest piece of garbage ever.
But
Holy
something
crap.
I would like to see is they have Titanfall on here. And we have not gotten like a single main company release. Like not even Kotobuki has done one, to my knowledge, like of any of the Titans from Titanfall, which all have like really good designs that could easily be made into very good looking model kits. Like we don't even really have good figures of them. We have a pop figure. We have a pop figure of like some of the Titans.
There's like actually no, I won't comment on Titanfall, but it's funny that you should mention this because like Halo was huge, right?
Yes.
How many good Master Chief or any Halo mecha anything is there?
We do have a Master Chief model kit.
But it's almost garbage. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, it's not garbage, but it's like compared to the stuff that like Bandai could have made at that time.
Yeah.
Right? Compared to stuff in like Figure Rise Standard or I don't know, even like what they've done with the Star Wars like characters since then.
Yeah.
Like even the American Darth Vader that we got was just so much worse. So it's just
yeah. So I sent you.
It's weird.
I sent you a picture of that. I found the picture. I guess it's not the 3D render. I was wrong. It is actually pictures of the model kit. That's the Shokugan modeling project.
That definitely looks really painted up, though. I gotta say.
It possibly is. Yeah. I want to see what the actual product looks like. No paint.
Yeah.
But the sculpt on it, I really do like the sculpt on it.
If it actually comes out looking that sharp, that is amazing.
Now, here's the thing. It may be painted, but that may be pre-painted applications that come with the kit because some Super Mini Pla already does come pre-painted. Like I bought the bought the Galgaigar King Jader from Mercari like last month, and that had quite a few pre-painted parts on it. And I was like, damn, I didn't even know Bandai did that. I thought that was like a Kotobukiya thing.
Yeah, well, I guess it wouldn't be hard for them to do that, right? Because there's so many like Shokugan things that come in bits,
right,
on like little runners that have pre-painting, so it's not like asking that much.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. But you know, speaking of like all of these little like Shokugan model kits and stuff, so like it's kind of I guess it can say it's like reasonable to assume that there wouldn't be as much Gundam stuff of this because, you know, Gundam already has like real model kits, right? So it's like, well, why spend, you know, like 1,000 yen to buy like 2 halves of a thing to build a tiny thing when I could just spend a little bit more and have an actual model kit of said thing?
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of interesting how like for some reason, when it comes to like actual like mobile suits, not like a deformed thing like Fusion Works Converge, which is a huge line that has lasted a really long time, and it's actually a really, well, depending on what your preferences are, it's either really cheap or very expensive. But like these kinds of things, like they just don't seem to last for very long for some reason, even if it is really popular, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You mean like as a whole, like the whole line?
Yeah, like for example, like Universal Unit just kind of ended.
Yeah.
Like several years ago for kind of no reason, and it kind of came back as like G-Frame, which is still going now, which, you know, it's great.
Yeah.
But it's just like why couldn't they just have kept it going? I guess it was just weird.
I know Super Mini Pla though definitely has been going for some time.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I'm not saying like that like there are no lines with like longevity. It's just that like for Gundam, they just seem to keep doing
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know,
well, for
weird-
Gundam,
weird
but
things.
I mean honestly, I personally would be a little bit. I'd be really upset if they start making Shokugan modeling projects where like, oh yeah, you guys can finally get some stuff from like Bongon, or you can get some more Metal Armor Dragon, or oh, Big O is also on here. You know, we never got any.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, we only
That'd be
got
cool.
one Big O kit. Maybe what I think there was only one. It was the old
Yeah.
Master Grade 1/100 scale Big O, and we never got any of the other Mega Deuces. We never got a revamped Big O.
Oh no, I think it was smaller. I think it was like well, no, it was high grade.
No, there was a Master Grade Big O. Let me look it
Really?
up. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I think
I'm
that's
pretty sure it was. Maybe
only
I'm
one that I
remembering
know of-
wrong.
the only one
oh,
I can think of off the top of my head is I think it was what 1990.
No, we're thinking the same. I was wrong. I swear I remembered seeing a Master Grade logo on this box, but no, there wasn't.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about.
Yes, that's the one I was talking about too. I just thought it was a Master Grade.
Yeah. It was a weird size. I know, because it wasn't like small, but it wasn't like big either.
Right.
And I could have sworn it was a high grade on the box, but I guess not. But yeah, that was, I mean, well, that Big O is a thing, and it is, I don't know.
It needs a lot of paint. But yeah, so like when you have this brand new line with all these potential IPs that have basically been sitting dormant, which are perfect for making really cool merch, and they would like go and make something in it like Gundam. Like Gundam doesn't need to be brought over into Shokugan modeling project. You already have perfectly good Plamo line for it that literally
for
has
sure, yeah,
it's so big it literally has coined its own name, Gundam Plastic Model, and it's like it's a brand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
it doesn't need to be brought over into a market for more obscure things.
Yeah. Although, so like in Shokugan modeling project is like the idea that everything once you assemble them are kind of in like the same-ish size.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think actually I don't think the Super Mini Pla are in scale. I don't
no, not in scale, but like so like you build like one thing, but it'll be like this. They're all like the same-ish physical size.
The King Jader is like the size of a perfect grade.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, that's why it costs.
Okay, never mind then. That's crazy.
And being a Premium Bandai Super Mini Pla, it's like almost $200, I want to say. Something
Okay,
like
because
that.
I remember
can't
like the earlier ones that were like that were like standard releases. Those weren't huge.
No, they're about like high grade size. Most of them
Yeah.
are. Some of them will be a little bit bigger. They'll generally float around like high grade to master grade size. Usually no smaller or larger though. They're kind of in between. I'll have to let you know when I get more of them, but they are pretty hard to find. I was able to get my hands on another Galgaigar Super Mini Pla for like $60 or something before shipping. It's a Hyoryu and Enryu one, the Choryujin Mini Pla. And I don't think you haven't seen Galgaigar, have you? You're not like a huge Braves fan?
I know of most of the mechs.
Yeah, so they're
Just through like osmosis.
yeah, it's the red and the blue ones. That,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I was gonna say they look like They're all basically
They're
like
the two
Transformers.
like ladder trucks or something that
Yes,
like
yep. The
halves and then they
one's the ladder truck, one's the fire truck. Yes.
Yeah.
So those I think are about high grade size. But yeah, like because of aftermarket and stuff, the prices on Mini Pla is completely exorbitant. Not even counting the already relatively high price point considering what you get with the product itself. Yeah, like aftermarket and the fact that they very I can't speak. They very rarely ever get reissued.
Honestly, if there was ever a case to be salty about like Bandai trying to squeeze people for money, like I feel like this is the kind of stuff that really would get people going. Just cause like.
Yeah, it gets me going. I mean, like, you've got to...
It's so much, and you pay so much, and it feels like you really get so little.
Yeah.
Like I was really close to getting the Victory Robo and Grand Liner.
Okay.
Because that as like a tiny kid, that was my favorite Super Sentai series. But
Yeah.
like and I was like, oh my god, this is like the first time almost ever that I'll be able to get a version of this, right, that's manufactured to kind of like modern standards, that combines and is articulate, because the Chogokin doesn't, I don't think the Chogokin separates or anything. But then like I was looking at it more and I saw the reviews and I was just like, it's just, I don't know. It's like, am I really about to spend like $300 to buy all of this?
Right.
Just to get this?
It's kind of like a 1-2 punch, or like a slap in the face, I guess, because you've got this really niche market of people who are like, Gao Gaigar fans are definitely not as plentiful as Gundam fans, right?
Sure, yeah.
Gao Gaigar is not a huge Eastern Empire of a franchise. Neither is like the Brave series as a whole. Now the Brave series does have a decently large like fan base, but nowhere near as Gundam still. And the Brave series barely gets merch except for like the occasional Soul of Chogokin figure, which even then I think we only have like 3 from the series. Super Robot Chogokin figures, which I don't even know the last time one of those was made. And then we've got Kotobukiya makes some Brave model kits that literally never get reissued. And then you've got Bandai, who's like, we're coming here to give you guys some model kits, but they're candy toys. And they don't necessarily look up to modern standards because they're candy toys. But even though they're candy toys, we're still going to charge you for them like they're not candy toys.
Yeah.
And people will defend it. Like, I mean, I've got a friend, if you're listening to this, you know who you are, I love you, but Super Mini Pla is not as good as you think it is, bro. It's still good, but you don't have to, you gotta get over your Stockholm Syndrome a little just because it's the only available model kits for the Brave series right now, I promise. You'll be freed from your shackles once they start making actual kits of it.
Honestly, I think I really hope that this isn't the case, but like, what if all of this is just like trying to see what will make for good product in HG Infinitism down the line? Yes,
because we got the Jig, and funny you bringing that up, because I literally just finished building the Jig last night, and the Jig wasn't in Mazinger Z Infinitism, if I'm remembering correctly, right? It's just a model kit made in the style of that.
I have no idea.
I
don't know enough to know, but all I know is
it wasn't in the movie, or was it a movie, or was it just, it's been so long since I've like seen it. It literally escapes my mind. I have the worst memory, but from what I was told recently, I don't think the Jig actually was featured in Mazinger Z Infinity, which is interesting, and that's what I was thinking about while I was building it, because I was like, this opens up the line for a ton of other stuff to be made in this style. Not that I'm a huge fan of the Infinitism style, I still really prefer the original, like, old 70s, 80s style Super Robot look without the modernization, but I don't think the Infinitism line is bad either. And if it means getting really good kits that also look good, that are up to modern standards of old classic designs that otherwise go unlooked, then I'm all for it.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping, right? So like, I certainly feel like the part of the price that goes into all of this comes from knowing that they can charge this much,
right? Because they have like the
captive, most like one of the most captive audiences you could possibly hope for.
That's the I was gonna go for a much more vulgar analogy, but I was gonna say they kind of got their audience by the balls.
Yeah. So well, yeah. Here's the hoping that there's brighter days ahead, I guess.
Yeah, I think I've said it before. Something I'd really like to see is like them make a master grade Gao Gaigar, which they totally could do. Like they totally could make one, make it look good, and implement the transformation in it, because the Soul of Chogokin figure perfectly, like almost 1-to-1, except for like the hands and maybe one other thing, like mirrors the transformation from the show, because it's a very simple transformation. And I mean, if they made that, I would definitely buy 2, because I'd want to display one in the transformed mode and one in like the separated mode. and I think a lot of other people would too. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not really going to go off on a tangent about that because I think I have before. I just can't really remember exactly what I've said in the past 3 episodes that we've done. But do you have anything else you wanted to talk about? Because we're like kind of creeping up on the hour-and-a-half mark here.
I think I'm going insane because I could have sworn there was a Super Robot Chogokin Victory Robo that they made. Like an articulated, smallish figure that's not the DX Chogokin. Okay, just in case any of you, Sentai fans beat me, because I did have the DX Chogokin and I really liked it, but oh god, must be a moment where I'm just making stuff up then. But
well, I mean, I thought that was a master grade Big O kit, so we could all just be misremembering some things. There's so much, there's so many different lines of toys and model kits.
There's an alternate timeline where all of these things we're talking about exist and they're amazing, and we're just not there. But it's okay. There's
an alternate timeline where they're real and they have a podcast and they're talking about model kits of you and me. Think about that. This just turned into the Joe Rogan podcast.
Oof. Okay.
You ever done DMT?
No.
Okay, neither have I. Anyways, I think unless you have anything else you really want to touch on, that's probably going to wrap it up for our 4th episode in this, I guess, what was intended to originally be a 4-part series. It's not to say we're not going to make more. Citrus, if you have any ideas of anything you want to talk about, like I know how you wanted to talk about Good Smile and Bandai today, like if you think of something like, oh, this would be great to talk about, or if I do the same, hit me up when I'm home, of course. Like I'm not going to be able to record a podcast from the barracks, but hit me up and we can record another episode if people want to see more. Definitely we can make some more, find something to talk about, or I might just make an episode or 2 featuring some other people as co-hosts as well to get a little bit more like creator diversity up here, I guess, some more people's opinions coming through the rotation. Different people got different stuff they want to talk about, so it could be a lot of fun. We could see where this series goes, I guess. But thank you all for tuning in to the this is the 4th episode. Oh my gosh, I'm tired. But yeah, thank you all for tuning into this episode, and hopefully you have watched the other 3. If not, they will be in a playlist for you to go check out, or you can just check them out on my channel. I think that's going to just about do it. Citrus, did you have anything you want to add before we kind of peace out here?
Nope. That's all. Thank you all for watching.
Yeah, so that's going to do it. I guess we will see you guys next time. Peace.